Open world games. You gotta love them. They've been taking over the gaming industry these past few years, with AAA developers like Ubisoft cranking them out like underpaid workers in a sweatshop. Oh wait. And most recently, of course, Elden Ring has blown up as the world's first open-world Souls-like game, officially becoming the Dark Souls of open-world games, or the Breath of the Wild of Souls games, or like Skyrim with more feet. Speaking of Skyrim, when I was a teenager, one of the first consoles I ever owned was a PlayStation 3 that my parents got me, and one of the first games I ever got for it was Skyrim. I still remember the drive home from the GameStop where I was just tearing through the manual and reading all of the text on the back of the game case, just waiting to play this game. And one of the first things I did on that car ride home was open up the physical map that the game came with and just stare in awe at the world that this game promised me. And as soon as I got home, I popped that disc in, booted the game up, waited for approximately 5 hours of updates because I had shitty internet, and then I started playing. And Skyrim absolutely delivered on the promise that it made with that physical map. Finishing the tutorial and leaving the first dungeon, the game just dumps you into its open world, and I was blown away by this. You mean I have this whole big-ass map to explore, an entire country to go see, and do whatever I want in? Skyrim truly felt leagues above the typical linear games I had played before that point because it was so much bigger and more open. There weren't just levels to go through, there was an entire country filled with people and places and things to do. Now, about the same time I finished playing Skyrim, I started playing Far Cry 3. After all, the game was fucking marketed as Skyrim with guns, but when I finished Far Cry 3's tutorial and got dumped into the open world, I quickly realized I wasn't feeling the same sense of exploration that I did with Skyrim. I wandered around at first and enjoyed the island that the game took place on, but I never felt like it was an actual world. The game was open world and had a similar amount of things to do, but I just never cared about the world or exploring it, and really ever only went from objective marker to objective marker. And don't get me wrong, I loved Far Cry 3. The gameplay moments in it were so much better to me than Skyrim, and the characters and the actual plot was much more interesting, probably because they had more than 5 voice actors in the whole game. But the open world in Far Cry 3 was by far my least favorite part. Though the game did let you burn a weed farm with a flamethrower while dubstep played, so what the fuck do I know? And since playing Far Cry 3 and Skyrim, I have played many more open world games, but more of them left me feeling like when I played Far Cry 3 than when I played Skyrim. In fact, playing Elden Ring was really refreshing because of how long it had been since I had had that great open world experience. So why don't all open world games give me that same feeling? Why can I love one and not the other, when theoretically they do the same thing? Why am I tired of open world games? Well, the answer is simple. There are different kinds of open world games, different variations of the same formula or different formulas altogether that all approach open world in a different way. Open world games are kind of like flavors in an ice cream shop, except the ice cream shop is 73 miles wide and you have to climb a radio tower to go to the bathroom. So let's go through some different flavors of open world games, see which ones work and which ones don't, and try and find out why I'm so tired of most of them. Also, before I continue, I would just like to say that if you aren't subscribed already, please do so. My channel has been blowing up recently, and I'm going to try to upload more frequently so I can feed my crippling addiction to buying great t-shirts. Alright, starting off with the biggest open world game company since Sliced Bread Studios, you've got Bethesda. I've already mentioned how much I love Skyrim, though all of their games really do follow that same Skyrim flavor. Going back to my ice cream analogy, Bethesda games are sort of like cookie dough ice cream, where they're rich and full of these big chunks of delicious cookie dough, though some of the cookie dough might have been a little undercooked and could possibly give you salmonella. Fallout New Vegas specifically is probably one of the best examples of Bethesda's strength in making an open world. The world has this strong sense that these are real characters and real locations with real backstories and logic behind them. There are towns and settlements and dynamic characters living in them, and the gameplay elements and quests feel kind of built into this pre-established setting. And even the more gamey elements of this open world, like bandit camps or wandering enemies, have some amount of effort put in to explain their significance, even if they do ultimately just exist for a gameplay purpose. There's always some little story or detail just put into their character to flesh them out in this world.
Have you ever tried to indulge in all-consuming urge to kill when you don't have opposable thumbs?
As the player, you feel like this world exists without you and that you're just a part of it. You might change this world in pretty big ways, but it feels like if you didn't do anything, the world would keep on going. New Vegas specifically sort of cements this with this long-winded opening narration where they explain the significance and detail and backstory behind all these different factions and locations before just calling you some guy and shooting you in the face.
Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
The game is telling you, you're not important, the world is. The defining element of Bethesda's open world is this focus on everything having its own story, and an explanation as to where everything is and why. And because of this, and the interactive nature of an RPG, you can very easily insert your character, however you decide to play them, into this world. This honestly crazy amount of detail does mean that a lot of the time Bethesda games are very buggy and broken, but I mean, what other developer writes 337 books into their open world dragon slaying game and doesn't even really expect you to read them?
Don't read them! No!
Please, don't read them all.
Don't read them!
You can read the top 5, that's fine.
Don't read them! No!
So let's move on to another flavor of open world that I really like, and that is Rockstar's, which I guess you'd describe as a very fancy chocolate ice cream. It's very high quality and rich and a little bit plain, but you really just want to stare at it more than you want to eat it. Pretty much all of Rockstar's games have incredibly strong world design, where they are amazing at crafting this realistic world with an insane amount of detail all over the place, to the point where modern graphics seem to have to catch up to them. But what's most interesting is that their core gameplay is still that of a simple shooter. These games aren't RPGs. You're not really persuading NPCs or picking up every item that you can see. There's no logs or journal entries for you to read. So instead of building elaborate stories and writings and lore, Rockstar has amazing visuals and an insane attention to detail. They take the ways that you can interact with the game and crank them up to 11. Red Dead Redemption 2 specifically has probably the most immersive open world I have ever played. You can boot up the game and almost immediately start experiencing this sense of life where everything is interacting with everything all of the time. Every single tree and building and weather-affected horse testicle feels integrated and realistic. Saint Denis feels like a real city because every single building is thought out, even when you can't go inside a lot of them. And all of the NPCs might have less story or character than they do in New Vegas, but they have explicit lives and routines outside of just being a punching bag for the player. You'll see an eagle swoop down and pick a fish out of a stream. You'll watch people go to the bar at night and stumble home afterwards. You feel that this world is full of living people. And even if all you do is shoot everyone all the time and run around like a maniac, the world responds accordingly. And I think this highlights the importance of the design aspect of an open world design, because the mechanical design of this world is very basic. There's objective markers and everything's laid out on your map, and if you want to, you can just run from mission to mission without really ever interacting with this world. But the game just gives you so many things to do that feel immersive to the character and fun to do just for the sake of it. Fishing, hunting, playing cards, or riding your horse through a forest and camping out in the wilderness. There's nothing in the game directly telling you to do this or really giving you anything for doing it, but because of this fully realized world, you just want to interact with it. No objective markers or missions needed. And mind you, I am just talking about the open world. There's an entire 30-minute video by Naked Jacob about the limitations of Rockstar's missions. But this video is just about ice cream, I mean open worlds.
You, sir, are a fish.
Now, like Skyrim, I did mention Far Cry 3 at the beginning of this video, and I have a lot more to talk about with Far Cry, but because all of the games are effectively the same and you have no evidence to prove me wrong on that, I'm just gonna spin a wheel to see which one is playing in the background. Cool. The Far Cry open world design can be more broadly called the Ubisoft open world design, since Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, The Division, and pretty much every game they've ever made follows it. And now I'm not exactly sure where this formula started or which game exactly made it popular, but I do know that Far Cry 3 was the biggest game of all time when it came out, so I'm just going to attribute the success of this style of open world design to Far Cry. And this flavor of open world is unfortunately chocolate chip. Because while there are some fun little bits of chocolate that you can eat, there's a lot of bland vanilla that you have to get through in between. If you just play these games as a psychopath, clearing out enemy camps and killing everyone you see, your experience with them honestly won't be that different, aside from the fact that Fallout's gunplay feels like shooting someone with a Nerf gun in a hurricane. The big difference, and where the Ubisoft open world design fails for me, is that every single aspect of the open world feels like it was made for the game. Unlike Bethesda, there's no story or history to explain the significance of a lot of these parts of the world and tie the gameplay and the story together. And unlike Rockstar, there's none of this attention to detail or great interaction with the world that sells it as real. These are just points on a map and nothing in between. Camps of enemies just exist for you to kill everyone inside and clear them out. Radio towers just exist for you to climb and unlock a part of the map. Towns and settlements are built haphazardly with no real logic or explanation as to why they're there. NPCs all feel like they T-pose as soon as you're done talking to them. Well, unlike in Fallout, where that literally happens sometimes. And my problem with this is that once you realize that this open world only exists for the gameplay elements inside of it, you have no reason to go anywhere in the world if there isn't an objective to do so. Once you liberate an outpost or climb a radio tower, it's a completely useless part of this world now. And the parts of this world that don't have map markers on them are just kind of empty. There's terrain or foliage, maybe some crafting materials or a random enemy, but there's not really much else. The Ubisoft formula is essentially an amusement park with different attractions that you can go have fun at. The rides themselves might be great, fantastic even. The missions in Far Cry 3 and Assassin's Creed 2 are still amazing to me, but the rest of the world outside of them is just filler for you to walk through to get to the next attraction.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? Insanity is doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change. That is crazy. And then I started seeing it everywhere I looked, all these fucking pricks. Everywhere I looked, doing the exact same fucking thing over and over and over and over and over again, thinking this time is going to be different.
And let's not just include games by Ubisoft in this particular flavor. There is an entire sea of games that take elements from Ubisoft. Spider-Man PS4, Arkham City, the Lord of the Rings game that was just kind of Arkham City again, that Mad Max game that nobody remembers, Dying Light, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon Zero Dawn, the list goes on. There's a lot of games that have the Ubisoft open world firmly stamped into them. And now some people might already be upset that I'm lumping in one of their favorite games as just Ubisoft open world, but before you write any mean comments, here's a picture of a puppy. Any mean comments and the puppy gets it. No, I actually really like some of these games. Spider-Man PS4 is one of the only games I've gotten a platinum trophy in besides Bloodborne, and I love the Arkham series. But they're good for what they add to the formula, not for the formula itself, because that formula is still Far Cry 3. And there's a key reason for this, because you might have already started writing a comment saying, well, Skyrim and Red Dead have mission markers and map objectives and things that Ubisoft games have. What's the difference? And that difference, for me at least, is that the hallmark of the Far Cry 3 Ubisoft formula is that there's nothing to do in the world besides what the game points out. Spider-Man PS4 has a great combat system, and the web-swinging traversal mechanics have literal crack added to them. But what is there to do in New York besides what the game points out, besides open-world collectibles and missions? Can you actually interact with the world of this game besides something that's just a big glowing objective marker? Even the random criminal activities that show up on the map, which are probably the closest thing the game has to a random encounter system, have a list of objectives they want you to complete with each one, and once you've done a certain part of the map, they stop showing up. That doesn't feel like a part of the open world or any freedom in gameplay, it feels like a checklist. In Ghost of Tsushima or Horizon Zero Dawn, the worlds are so beautiful that they could really compete with a Rockstar game and just make you want to walk around them when you're not doing anything, but what is there to actually do? Because outside of collecting crafting materials and killing a random enemy, I can't really think of anything. I can go write a haiku on a cliff and feel immersed in this world, and then the game tells me that there's 7 more to do in this region. How have you made me feel stressed about meditating? I didn't even know that was possible. Take all of the missions and map markers and everything the game is pointing out for you to do out of all of the games I've just mentioned, and how many of them are still fun to play? How many of them do you have something to do? Skyrim and New Vegas would still be fun to play. I would still love to go and explore all of these worlds and read all of the lore bits and talk to the NPCs. GTA and Red Dead would be fun to play because I could just drive or ride around the map, killing people and doing whatever I want, feeling immersed in the world. Is Dying Light particularly fun to play? I can go kill zombies and get more items to kill more zombies. Is Arkham City fun to play? I can go beat up criminals maybe? Maybe that's about it. Despite how much content an open world game might have, if all of it is curated side content and missions, I don't even see the point of putting it in an open world. It may as well have been a linear game or a mission select screen, because that's all the open world boils down to if I don't have anything else to do in it. The world is just filler to pad out the length of the game with often reused side content and all of the time you spend walking from mission to mission. You've taken a 20-hour game and stretched it out to 60 hours with 3 different maps with some different colored grass that I still have to liberate the same camps in. Oh my god, Ghost of Tsushima made me want to write a real-life haiku on a cliff and then jump off of it. So I think that adequately describes why I'm tired of open world games. I've burnt out on pretty much every open world game with the Ubisoft style that I've played. So let's spend the rest of this video going through some open world flavors that I really like and I think serve as a good alternative to the Ubisoft style. First up, you have Breath of the Wild, which is probably the most unique open world that I've covered so far. It's almost definitely a Baskin-Robbins make your own ice cream, no doubt about it. There's not a whole ton of flavors here, but with the ones that they give you, you can make anything that you want. And yes, I'm still going to use the ice cream metaphor. It's starting to get old, but I don't think it has yet. In Breath of the Wild, you are given a certain number of tools that can interact with the environment in set ways. Bombs blow things up, fire burns things, lightning can strike metal objects, leaves could be used to create a gust of wind. Everything in the game has a purpose and a way that it interacts with the environment. The game also has an incredibly open traversal system. You can climb and glide anywhere provided you have enough stamina. If you see a mountain in the distance, you can just go to it, like in Skyrim. But unlike Skyrim, you can climb the entire thing without having to clip your horse into the side of it and launch yourself off at 400 miles an hour, which is a real speedrunning tactic, by the way. It's called horse tilting, and I highly suggest that you look it up. So all of the open world in Breath of the Wild has to do is give you a giant map with all of these items and elements and areas and just say, go wild. And it adds shrines, towers, enemies, and Korok seeds as these natural objectives throughout the world, and leaves it up to you to use the environment to go complete them. The game has some mission markers and objectives and content out in the world that you can go do, but that's by far the least interesting part of it. It's that the game gives you so many tools and elements and abilities to use for these objectives. Oftentimes, just the act of finding a shrine or a tower or some objective out in the open world is more fun than the objective itself. The open world is the game, the objectives are just inside of it. As another good example of this that I'll just sort of lump into the Breath of the Wild formula is Metal Gear Solid 5. It's like a Baskin-Robbins, except the employees won't stop talking about proxy wars and nuclear armaments, and they just won't shut up about Moby Dick. Metal Gear Solid 5 will literally just give you an objective out in the open world that's just go kill this guy, and they let you do whatever you want in between. The game does give you a score at the end of each mission. That's kind of how well you snuck through it, but I never gave a shit about that. I was way too busy taking a dude out, ballooning him up into the air, slide tackling his friend while he's looking at the first dude, and then hiding in a cardboard box so a third guy comes in and just has no idea what the fuck is going on. Because I could do all of that. The game let me.
We've reviewed into everything else that's happened since you arrived here. Please. Guilty! All counts. Kill him! Kill him! Kill him!
Moving on to the last flavor of open world I'll be talking about, we have Elden Ring, which is almost definitely the most popular open world game out right now. It's been massively celebrated, critically appraised, and even has an hour-long critique video by some asshole made about it. I would describe the Elden Ring open world flavor as whatever Scarlet Rot tastes like. Just whatever flavor in your head Scarlet Rot would taste like. I think it would actually be a nice strawberry because this swamp looks delicious. Elden Ring, as I've talked about, was one of the most refreshing open world games I've played, and almost definitely the reason I'm making this video. Because it came out at the same time as Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West Part 2 and Dying Light 2 Stay Human Platinum Digital Deluxe Founders Edition, which I'm sorry to the fans of both of those games, but they both look like the most boring games in the world to me. Elden Ring is definitely its own style, mostly just because the Souls-like genre is so different as a type of game that to make an open-world Souls game is unique on its own. The core gameplay and the way that the story and NPCs are handled is just so different from most modern games that putting it into any type of open world would be unique. But the game's open world is also great on its own. Nothing is marked down until you find it. There are bosses and dungeons and hidden walls and secrets all over the place that you have to actually search for. And of course, there's 100 asylum demons copy-pasted throughout the map because, well, some things just never change. Everything is optional. Every single part of this game is just out in the world. You can beat Elden Ring in less than 5 bosses. There are over 200 in this game. How many are unique is another issue because some Elden Ring fans did not like me for that take. But hey, the Ubisoft formula points out things on your map and tells you should go do them. Elden Ring doesn't tell you shit. You're just out here in the world, motherfucker. Enemies are difficult, figure something out. Go into this cave and see what's inside. There might be a boss that kills you, or there might be an elevator that takes you down to an entire other area of the map. Good luck. Yes, these things are just objectives on a map, and really all you can do is run around and kill things, and maybe that sense of exploration only really works for your first playthrough, but just for that sense of exploration that it gives you, I think it's well worth it. That sense of intrigue and adventure that you get when you first discover something really cool in this game is what the game is selling you. Just as an example, there is an entire optional main boss in this game with an achievement tied to it that can only be unlocked by killing another optional boss, going into a secret area it unlocks, killing another optional boss in that area, going into the secret area behind that, then going into another secret area behind that one. And this optional boss is tied to one of the endings of the game. No other game would do that. No Ubisoft game would let you miss something that big. And that's the point of Elden Ring's open world, to let you find that optional secret boss and let you feel like you've discovered a core secret of the world. And I have an entire video with my criticisms of the open world and how I think it's a bit too big and has a bit too much of the same stuff in it, but even considering that, this game does a lot more than most. The fundamental change to the purpose of the open world is more than enough to be refreshing and put it above the rest.
Oh, yes. Tarnished, are we? Come to the lands between for the Elden Ring? Of course you have. No shame in it. Unfortunately for you, however, you are maidenless.
And that specifically is sort of the point of this video. Elden Ring being made was a completely new flavor of open world being invented. And judging from the fact that the Souls games have an entire genre named after them, I really hope that more games take after Elden Ring. Looking at that same old Ubisoft open world formula, all I see is Far Cry 3. That game's bones have been so thoroughly worked into the language of open world games for so long. And I think I've expressed my discontent with the limitations that those bones have. But more so than that, I don't even really hate the formula. I hate that games don't really do anything new on top of it. Elden Ring did something new. Breath of the Wild did something new. They can have missions and objectives all they want, but if there's some new way to interact with the world or some reason for it being there, I don't really care. I want games I can miss content in. I want games that let me do things out of pre-selected missions. I want games that make me feel like this world has a reason to be there. You know what's a unique open world game? Death Stranding. That is one of the most unique takes on an open world that I've seen in years. Kojima literally boiled down the very act of walking across the world into a core mechanic. That's new, that's impressive, that's a reason for the game to be open world. Do I think the game is great? Not really. I think I might hate it actually, but it did something new. It used the open world to do something other than just cram time trials or crafting materials into. Even an open world game like Shadow of the Colossus is interesting, because that game is technically open world. The world is empty and there's nothing to do in it, but that's the point. Riding for miles in between these giant stone creatures that you have to put down is a big part of the game, and we've looked at a lot of different flavors of open world games today. Well, I have. You haven't done shit. But of these flavors that we've looked at, there are many that I would love to see more of. More Breath of the Wilds, or New Vegases, or Red Dead 2s. There's even a ton of unique ones I missed, like Subnautica, or, you know, Minecraft. Because I'm sick of buying a new $60 ice cream and just tasting chocolate chip again. It honestly makes me want to throw up. I want a Rocky Road, or a pistachio, or whatever Death Stranding tastes like. Monster Energy and piss, I guess. Anyway, what I'm saying is that a lot of the open world genre has become synonymous with big open world full of filler. And I don't care if there's robot dogs or a really cool movement system or I get to feel like Batman. I want open worlds that feel fun and rewarding to explore. I want games built around their open worlds, not open worlds built around a game. Because I'm tired of open world games that are just Far Cry 3. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. My channel has been blowing up recently over that Elden Ring video I made, and honestly, I'm surprised that it got as big as it did, because ironically, the video that blew up my channel and has quintupled my subscriber count was the one I just kind of made out of the blue. I didn't even put that much effort into the editing. I think I unironically use a slide wipe a couple of times in that video. And while I do enjoy critiquing things a lot, if you've seen my previous videos, it's not really a super sustainable type of video to make, just because movies and games and stuff that I have opinions on are few and far between to begin with. Videos like this one on more general topics are much easier for me to make, and what I'd like to do if you all enjoy it. So let me know if you like this video in the comments and what kind of video you'd like to see going forward. Really, I'm open to any suggestions at this point. I've made like 5 different kinds of videos in a row, so anything is fair game. That being said, I am super appreciative of all the support that you guys have shown me. It has been insane. I have tried to read every single comment I could, even if I couldn't reply to them all. I have just passed 1,000 subscribers as of recording this video, and I mean, thinking about getting monetization on my channel or like getting people to follow me off of videos that I make is just insane to me. So thank you again for watching. If you've made it this far into the video, let me know what your favorite open world game is and what flavor of ice cream you think it is. I'll see you next time.